Good day, everyone. Welcome to our session on cloud virtualization and computing. In this module, we will learn how virtualization made modern and cloud computing possible. We will go back to the history of how it started, then we will connect it to the technologies that we use today, like virtual machines, hypervisors, and cloud services. By the end, you should understand not only the concepts but also how they apply in real-world computing environments. Let's begin with virtualization. Simply put, virtualization allows us to run multiple operating systems or computing environments on a single physical machine. Imagine having just one computer. But inside, you could run Windows, Linux, and even older versions of software. At the same time, instead of buying three separate computers, you only need one. That saves money, space, and power. Virtualization allows multiple instances of an operating environment to run a single piece of hardware. This is not new. It dates back on 1950s when large mainframes were shared among multiple users, a concept called time sharing. To understand virtualization, we first need to review how hardware and software work together. Think of hardware as your body, your muscles, bones, and organs. Software is like the brain telling the body what to do, and without the software, hardware just sits like they're doing nothing. And without hardware, software has nothing to run on. Virtualizations work by creating a middle layer and then lets one piece of hardware run many virtual brains or systems at once. Here we can see that the mainframe acts or functions only when single program is executed. It cannot multitask nor it can support multi-user. So in mainframe era exists during 1950s to 1970s. Next is the client server computing. So the client-server computing serves single point of failure, which means that server crash affects all client. And secondly, it has high server cost. That is, it is expensive and hardware maintenance is difficult. Next is complex management. So client-server computing needs skilled admins for setup and upkeep network dependency. So that is no access without a working network. And also it has performance bottlenecks. It means that too many users slow down the server and then leads to security risks, which server is a primary target for cyber attacks. Also, it has scalability issues that is difficult and costly to scale up and has offline limitations. That is, client needs constant server connection. By the 1970s, client-server computing started to emerge, and later in the 1980s, companies faced what we call the server sprawl, which means too many servers, each doing just one job. Now, IBM and other pioneers developed virtualization as a way to solve this problem, allowing a single powerful machine to run and multiple workloads. This laid the foundation for cloud computing as we know it today. So IBM is the first company was able to develop what we call the time sharing or the multitasking in just one computer hardware using that we can now use with multiple application in just one hardware. Do you use a smartphone, laptop, or home computer? Smartphones, laptops, or computers are hardware. This is similar to how your brain controls your actions. Software controls hardware. There are different types of software that controls computer actions. Okay, so let's identify the following. So let's recall the key parts of hardware. First is the CPU or the processor. So the CPU is the brain that executes instructions. And then the RAM, which is acronym as Random Access Memory, is the short-term memory which stores information temporarily while you are working or using an application. Next is we have the ROM or read-only memory. So ROM contains permanent startup instructions like the BIOS that boots your system. Then we have the motherboard, which is the big circuit board connecting everything, and chipsets are like traffic managers controlling how data flows. Finally, we have the storage like devices such as HDDs and SSDs. All your files are permanently stored here. So all of these components play a role in enabling virtualization. So how does virtualization actually work? Imagine slicing your computer into multiple independent sections. Each section acts like mini computer with its own operating system and applications. This means that one physical machine can host many virtual machines, making computing more efficient and flexible. So system software is very important in terms of the functionality of its hardware. Since the system software acts like a brain that produces an output by making the hardware work. Then we have the operating system control. So OS controls the hardware, and also application software tells your system to execute a task that you want. Now on the software side, we have two main types. So first is the system software, which includes the operating systems here, which manages the hardware and provides a platform for other software. When we have application softwares, programs like Microsoft Word, Google Chrome, or games that you play rely on the operating system to function. In virtualization, both system and application software can exist inside the virtualized machine, making it feel like a complete separate computer. Next is the virtual machine. So, virtual machine is the result of virtualization. It is basically a file that behaves like a computer. So the hypervisor creates and manages these virtual machines. For example, if you're a developer, you might use one virtual machine to test your application on Windows and another virtual machine to test it on Linux without needing to separate devices so to test the applications that you are working on. So, do you think, is it convenient? Yes, it's very convenient. In terms of time and money, you can really save a lot. And for virtualization, we can create or we can multitask using or accessing many applications at the same time. The key player here is the hypervisor. So what is the hypervisor? Hypervisor is a software installed on top of the hardware rather, that created virtualization layer. So here you can see that we have the OS, then we have the hypervisor, then the virtualization, and then the applications that run over it. So the first type of hypervisor is bare metal hypervisor. So what is a bare metal hypervisor? So we will understand that further on the next slide. Bare metal hypervisor, on the other hand, is the first type of hypervisor that are perfect for everyday users. They run on top of your operating systems like a regular application. For example, you might install VirtualBox on your Windows laptop to try out Linux. It's slower computer to type 1 but very convenient for testing and learning. Sorry. So type 1 hypervisor rather is often used in data centers. So I mistakenly exchanged the explanation for type 1 and type 2. So for type 1, which is the So for type 1, the previous one that I'm talking about is often used in data centers, and it is instills directly on the physical hardware. So there's no operating system in between, and thus this makes it fast, secure, and ideal for large-scale server environments. Now let's shift to cloud computing. If virtualization allows multiple systems to run on one computer, cloud computing takes that concept online. Cloud computing delivers services like storage, applications, and servers through the internet. That's why you can access Google Drive or Office 365 from anywhere, because they're hosted on the cloud, not on your personal computer. Now, cloud computing is like a cloud architecture that has two sides. The front end, what the user sees in the interface like your browser or application, and the back end, that is the actual infrastructure or the servers, database, and networking that power the system. Together, they make cloud services smooth and user-friendly. Imagine computing like electricity. You don't need to own a power plant to use an electricity. You just plug it into the wall or use what you need and pay for it. So we have a messenger application that is powered by Meta. So we don't have to own big mainframes with databases that has that has the composition of the software. You just have to install the application through the App Store or through our Microsoft shops and etc. So using your mobile phone, we can access the services that the messenger provides using the cloud computing. So cloud computing works the same way, but instead of electricity, you're using the computing power, storage, or software over the internet. Think of cloud architecture as a cake with layers. At the bottom of your of your architecture, you have infrastructure as a service. So basic things like storage and virtual servers are located there. And in the middle platform is we have the service, which has the tools for developers to build applications. On top of the service is the programs like Gmail applications or Zoom that we use directly, and each layer builds on the one that below it. Of course, cloud computing isn't perfect. There are challenges like protecting data and privacy, managing cost, handling multiple cloud providers, ensuring performance, making system flexible, and heavy reliance on internet connection. Plus, not all organizations have the knowledge or expertise to handle these issues. These challenges are important for IT professionals like us, or computer, or any professionals who are related to the computer field like us to study. So in the layered cloud architecture development, there are three layers. First is the infrastructure cloud. So infrastructure cloud abstracts application from servers and servers from the storage. An infrastructure cloud includes the physical components that run application and store data. Next is the content cloud. So the content cloud is the cloud that implements metadata and indexing services over the infrastructure. So to provide abstracted data management for all content. The goal of the content data or the content cloud is so that it will be able to abstract the data from the application so that different applications can be used to access the same data. And applications can be changed without worrying about data structure or type. The content cloud transforms data into objects so that the interface to the data is no longer tied to the actual access to the data, and the applications that created the content in the first place can be long gone while the data itself is still available and searchable. Next, but not the least, is the information cloud. So the information cloud is the ultimate goal of cloud computing and the most common from public perspective. The information cloud abstracts the client from the data. For example, a user can access data stored in a database in Singapore via a mobile phone in Atlanta, or watch a video located on a server in Japan from his laptop in the US. So the information cloud abstracts everything from everything. So the internet is, for example, an information cloud. Now, cloud providers often work together creating a cloud of clouds. For example, a company might use AWS for storage, and Microsoft Azure for applications, and Google Cloud for machine learning, all connected to form a powerful integrated systems. This collaboration gives user more flexibility and scalability. So cloud computing design challenges. We have data security, privacy, cost management, multi-cloud environments, performance challenges, interoperability and flexibility, high dependence on network, and lack of knowledge and expertise for those handling the servers or the cloud virtualization and computing. Finally, the cloud computing today is highly marketed oriented. So providers compete to offer the fastest, cheapest, and most reliable services. That's why you see companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft constantly innovating. For business, choosing the right cloud provider can make a big difference in cost and performance. Intercloud or cloud of clouds is a term referred to theoretical model for cloud computing service based on the idea of combining many different individual clouds into one simplest mass in terms of on-demand operations. The intercloud would simply make sure that cloud could use resources beyond its reach by taking advantage of pre-existing contracts with other cloud providers. The intercloud scenario based on the key concepts that each single cloud does not have a finite physical resources or ubiquitous geographical footprint. If a cloud saturates the computational and storage resources of its infrastructure, or is requested to use resources in a geography where it has no footprint, it would still be able to satisfy such requests for service allocation sent from its client. Now let us see these diagrams. This diagram. This diagram shows how organizations or consumers can request and receive cloud computing resources like storage or processing power using similar system to a marketplace or auction. First is the user. This user is the enterprise IT consumer. So a person or company needs computing resources like servers or storage. Okay, servers or storage. They don't want to buy the hardware. They want to rent it from the cloud. So enterprise resource manager, think of this as the company's internet manager who collects all the resources needed. So for example, we need 4 servers with 2 terabytes of storage. It sends its request for resources to a cloud broker. So this is the first cloud broker. So this is the consumers and the first cloud broker. So the cloud broker are the middlemen who help the find best deal in the cloud market. They negotiate or bid on behalf of the consumer to get the best price or capacity from cloud providers. So we can see here the Global Cloud Exchange. Think of this as an online marketplace where cloud services are bought and sold like Amazon, but for computing. It includes directory, a list of available services, bank that handles the payment and billing, and auctioneer that helps match buyers or brokers with sellers and cloud providers based on pricing and availability. Then the cloud providers, these are the companies offering computing services, and then one of the computing services is the virtual machine that processes power, or the storage cloud that gives space to store files and databases, and with this they publish their offers to marketplace in Global Cloud Exchange, saying what they have available and what price are they in. So the user makes a request to the broker, and then the broker finds in the cloud exchange to negotiate the best deal. Then they select the cloud provider dealers in the service to give computation or storage over the internet. Then the consumer uses this service without needing to know where it physically is. So in real world analogy, so let's imagine renting a hotel room online. You're planning a trip and you go to travel. So you're planning a trip, that's when we need the computing, so how much space that we need. And you go to a travel website or a cloud broker. This site searches many hotels and that is the cloud providers. Via a travel marketplace, Cloud Exchange, you book the best and one of your best one for your budget, and you don't care where the hotel system is hosted. You just want it to work when you arrive. So the main takeaway is this system allows businesses to dynamically find and use cloud services like computing and storage in the most efficient way, like shopping in a marketplace without owning any physical hardware. And here are some of my resources upon preparing this module. So you can visit them to study deeper on our